All right, good afternoon and welcome to Charter Directors Meeting for April. As I mentioned, we're glad you're here. Happy to see a few smiling faces and lots of great names, people that we know and love and appreciate. So thank you for being here for Directors Meeting. We will go ahead and get started with our director's message. So we will turn the time over to Director Lambert. Let me get your screen pulled up for you.
Thank you. And I just want to echo what Marie said. Welcome. I love the sun. I hope you guys do as well. Speaking of the sun and the change in weather, we are hitting towards the end of the school year. And so congratulations on making it this far. Just as a reminder, we don't hold directors meetings during the summer. So next month, I can't believe we're already to this already, but next month is our last directors meeting of the school year. And so then we will take a little hiatus during the summer and then come back while you're getting ready for the next school year. So this year has gone by fast, at least it has for me. I don't know if it has for you as well, but congratulations on making it. So if you can go to the next slide, Marie. I want to introduce this month's charter employee of the month, and we are recognizing Christina Horton, and this one's really kind of exciting for us. This is the first time we've had a parent who nominated our employee of the month, and so we had someone from the PTO. She nominated Christina. And she is from, by the way, Christina's from Summit Academy Independence, their Independence campus. And the Miss Bills who nominated Christina said that Christina is the definition of a well-rounded and caring administrator. She goes so far above and beyond to make sure the students, teachers, and families are taken care of in a way that so easily gets overlooked. She is personable, kind, caring, intelligent, wonderful at her job, and so spectacular with her students. Christina, are you on the call? I see Molly.
Yes, I am, but
Wonderful.
I'm in St. George, so spring break.
I did see you earlier, and I was thinking I was a little envious at seeing your background, but I just want to thank you, Christina, for all that you do, recognizing what you do. I know that Molly Hart is also on the call. I don't know if she has anything to say. She is the new executive director, or will soon be, at Summit Academy. Is there anything you wanted to share, Molly?
Yeah, actually, I want to turn the time over to Lisa Cutler, who is on the call, who is the principal there. I'm just along for the ride for the next little bit and learning all that I can. So I'd really appreciate if you'd give Lisa just a moment.
Wonderful, Lisa.
Okay, well, I will be happy to highlight a little bit because as you know, we have, as administrators, or some of you know, been sharing the leadership this year until Molly's announcement. And so having an assistant principal, and actually Christina is new to that position this year, who could carry the load she's carried while I've helped carry the load for the LEA, has been actually amazing. And to have a parent be able to say that in her first year of doing that is actually pretty amazing, and it's very accurate. What she says is extremely accurate. So I think it's fantastic that she is being highlighted today.
Well, thank you. Christina, is there anything you want to say? Probably not, but
There's not a whole lot, no. Just that I work with some amazing administrators, some wonderful teachers, and some really, truly wonderful parents. And so I feel lucky to be in the position I am.
well, thank you. We will have a little certificate and Amazon gift card sent to your school for you, and just a small token of appreciation. And thank you.
Thank you.
I have one other good news thing for this month. want you to save the date. We are doing, this is our second annual celebration at the Bees. What we do is we choose from those that have that are up for a comprehensive review for this year. And from those schools, we look at the data, and based on the data, we select a handful of schools to honor. And so we are recognizing those schools. We'll have a little celebration for them, but we also want you to be aware of the June 8th date. And this is something that we can get discounted tickets for all of your students and families. And it's kind of like a little charter day at the baseball game. And so we really hope that you can publish this out. If you want a copy of the flyer, please let myself or Marie know, and we can get that to you so that you can send it out to your schools. In fact, Marie, could you just send out the little flyer to all the schools?
Yes, happy to do that.
And that way you can forward it on to your families, and that way they can get that discounted ticket, and we can just show our love and support of each other at a Bees game. And hopefully it'll be good weather and a good game. And I believe that is all that I have for today. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Marie, and I believe Shannon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Director Lambert. And you are spot on. Next up, we have Shannon Greer from the Charter Association, and she will share some announcements and upcoming events with us as well. So Shannon, the time is yours.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of our upcoming trainings with you. So really quickly, again, this is April and into May, since some of these trainings will be before we meet again. Our next administrative lunch seminar is going to be a discussion on using student data to discuss and drive decisions going into next fall. So if you'd like to join us for that conversation, I think that will be very enlightening and a timely discussion. Our pre-operational schools will be meeting to discuss recruiting and finding key employees. We have a board training scheduled for May 3rd. And this is where we're going to be discussing with boards how to conduct effective board evaluations going into the summer, and anticipating that many of them will have board retreats. This is a great opportunity for them to reflect on their own practice and be able to use some of the resources we provide to help them with that. A special invitation will be going out to the boards, but we did want the directors to be aware of that as well. We have 2 classes left for our ACES training, the 18th and the 25th, and the 25th will also be in person. And those classes have been very effective at helping those who are participating prepare to step into administrative roles if that's their choice. So because it's been so successful and because we've had great feedback, we are going to offer a summer ACES course. The kickoff will be May 16th, and the class will actually be in conjunction with the UAPCS conference. So the Tuesday of conference, we'll be meeting in the morning before conference starts. And then we will be meeting again the second day for a brief class. And then we'll be meeting again a couple of times through the month of June, so that those who are participating and looking to step into administrative roles in August have this tool bag of discussion and topic conversations as they move into that new role. So if there's anyone in your building that is going to be stepping into an administrative role or looking to or considering to do so, if you'll pass this along to them, we'll send more information out through the UAPCS network and be able to share more of those. But some of the topics that they'll be discussing in conjunction with that course would be administrative ethics, charter fidelity and organizational structure, collaboration as a leadership style, effective evaluations and engaging your staff and your faculty, and then management versus governance, of course, working with your board, and of course, SPED law, because that is such an important topic to make sure we get right, and then understanding funding sources. Some of those will be the topics of discussion for that course. And last but not least, I just wanted to draw your attention to our administrative retreat that is scheduled for April 24th. The discussion will be social and emotional leading, and lunch will be provided. So there's the link on the screen. I've also sent it in the group chat. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you, or, clarify anything for you. But we're really looking forward to offering some of these trainings. We're really grateful for the State Charter School Board for the grant that allows us to provide these trainings and these experiences for you. And I, like Jennifer, cannot believe that we are at the end of the school year and that these topics are helping us to prepare for summertime and next school year. So if you would like to join us, there's the information. All the websites, all the Zoom links are found on the UAPCS website, or I'd be happy to send them directly to you if you would like. Thank you, Marie, for giving me the opportunity to just brush up on some of these opportunities.
Thank you so much. And Shannon, I did want to just check, are we still accepting applications for the conference? Do we want to touch on that as well?
I would love to. So we are also, in conjunction with the State Charter School Board, offering scholarships for the conference this year. If you participated and completed the current ACES class, then we have a scholarship set aside for you to attend the conference. If you're a pre-operational school, we also have that. But we're also offering scholarships to our existing schools, both charter boards, directors, and business administrators. So if you are interested in participating in the scholarship program that would pay for your admittance into the UAPCS conference, I'm going to put a link in the group chat in just a moment that will help you get to that place to be able to do that application. It will also be sent out in the UAPCS newsletter that will be going out tomorrow. So if you're interested in attending conference, this is something that you would like. This the scholarship application is a short application. It's not going to take you hopefully more than 10 minutes or less. And those scholarships will be awarded on the 20th. The deadline closes on the 20th, and the scholarships will be awarded the week following. So if that's something you're interested in, we would love to have you join us. Thank you, Marie, for reminding me of that great opportunity.
Awesome. We're excited about the scholarship opportunity as well. So hopefully we'll have lots of individuals take advantage of the opportunity. So, all right, well, it's back to me, and we'll get to our in case you missed it section. A reminder that this is going through just a few different emails or announcements that have come through your inbox, and in case you missed it, here's a reminder about them, or just a recap, making sure it's on your mind. If you have questions, I did try to include the contact of who the email says to get in touch with, or if you're not sure, you can always reach out and we will help you connect with the appropriate person or get the resource. So from the USBE, some things that came your way this past month. Just today, Sarah Wibke and her team sent out the P12 ELA standards. They were actually approved just last week. She did promise that a prettier version would be coming soon, but wanted to get the draft out to schools just today that was approved last week. She also mentioned in there that a reminder that these would be taught in the 23-24 school year, and then the testing on them would begin in 24-25. So as teachers are starting to work on planning and working on curriculum maps for the coming year, remind them that there are revised English language arts standards that they will need to be aware of. If you have questions on that, again, Sarah Wibke would be your contact for that. Also from the USBE, they are seeking public comment on their application for IDEA Part B. So if that is something that you would like to provide public comment on, the survey where you can provide that public comment is available until April 17th. I know April is getting away from us. Today is April 10th. So you've got 7 days until it's April 17th, which is hard to believe, but you've still got some time there. If you need to do that and you don't have that email, the contact there is Jerry Rogers, or again, let us know and we can get you connected. I know a lot of schools were on spring break. There were news stories around, so you're probably aware of this, but there was that hoax that happened where a number of district schools received threat hoaxes over the last week following the shooting in Tennessee. And following that, Chantel Coda and her team sent out a PDF that had a lot of communication and resources available related to school safety. We don't believe that any charter schools were part of the big hoax that happened throughout the state, but always good to be prepared and to make sure that you're aware of those communication and safety resources. So a good thing to read through, make sure your staff and your front office and any appropriate parties are aware of the plans that you have, and hopefully they never have to get used, but that they're available there. Additional announcements from the USBE. If you are interested in the Utah Teacher Fellows Program, they are recruiting for their 4th teacher cohort, and that recruitment application is due April 15th. So reminder, today is April 10th. You have 5 days if you would like a teacher to participate in that. The neat thing with this program is that teachers are able to remain in the classroom, but help develop policy solution for education changes and challenges. So if that's something that you're interested in, this is actually through the Hope Street group, so it wouldn't be a contact at the state board, and the name there is Tabitha P at hopestreetgroup.org, and she can get you all the information that you would need about that. Next on here, we have the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program. This is a fun and easy way to expose kids to more fruits and veggies. I know that our school, Bridge Elementary, I'm not sure if Lonnie's on, but we see their posts all the time in social media that they are doing the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program and have gotten to try lots of different things. It looks like a really fun way to bring different fruits and veggies to the classroom. If you want to hear more about it, you could probably ask Lonnie if you want like a inside scoop on what it's really like. But if you would like to actually participate in the program, Kate Wheeler at the USBE is your contact there. I have it on good authority based on the email that almost everyone who applies is able to get that program, that they have more funding available than people who are participating in the program. So if that's something you'd like to do, it sounds like it's a pretty guaranteed option that you would have. The third one here, a big one, I know lots of you were waiting. We had our legislative meeting a few weeks ago. The bill book is now available. It's on the USBE website. If you have questions about that bill book, or they also have the little short guide there, the contact there, it did say to reach out to Angie Stallings. I know Greg Cannell also helped present with her, so I'm sure he could help. We can also help you if you have questions there, but the bill book has been released. Also, I know a few of you have reached out as well that the link we sent out has not been working for you. We did have to change some settings on that. So if you go to watch the link of the legislative meeting and it's not working, let me know and I can give you that updated link so that we can make sure that viewing is available for you. Finally, our last slide from the USBE, there is the De-Implementation Institute, and this sounded like a really exciting opportunity. It's a 4-part series. The first part starts in June. They were recognizing that there are a lot of different initiatives and strategies and things that are happening at schools. And so in this institute, you're going to go through and list all of your different initiatives and priorities and actually work to de-implement some of those things so that you can really have a clear, cohesive focus for your school for the coming year. If you have questions about that, your contact would be Jennifer Thronson. The CCLC, which stands for the 21st Century Community Learners Centers or Learning Centers Grant. That was quite a tongue twister, is available as well. This is one where you're able to provide opportunities for academic enrichment, additional programs, and community learning centers. So if you're doing things before school, after school, on the weekends, this might be a really great grant to look into. Your contact there is Savannah Hunt. And then the last thing to make you aware of is that USBE is also seeking feedback on Portrait of a Graduate. It took me a while to remember that that's what POG meant when I kept seeing it put there, not our pineapple, orange, and guava, right? If we've been to Hawaii. But Portrait of a Graduate. The survey was sent out from the USBE Strategic Plan 4B Committee. They would love to get your feedback by April 14th. That's 4 days from now. So if you haven't given that feedback yet, Rick Gaisford at the USBE is your contact for that. So if you have any questions on these, let us know. We're happy to send you those emails or get you connected with those folks. From the State Charter School Board, just a few quick recaps. From our board meeting this last month, we received reports from mentors that have been working with the school on probation. An extension was granted, as well as an amendment request. The SCSB also received a financial report regarding portions of all of our LEA's financial health. And the SCSB received a legislative update. So if you're curious about any of that, go back and watch the March State Charter School Board meeting. As Director Lambert mentioned, our May directors meeting is our last one of this school year. That's May 8th, 12:30 to 3:30 here on Zoom. We'll continue to keep meeting on Zoom until you guys tell me otherwise. If you want to go back in person, let me know. We'll send out a survey again. Majority rules, that's how we make our decisions here. So be watching for that. And then May will also be our last employee of the month for this school year. So get your nominees in. We really loved having that parent nominee. We thought that was so fun for this last month. So send it to your community, share. We love having all of that. You may have also noticed that you didn't get a newsletter yet this month. It's actually going to hit your inbox today. We did announce the Christina Horton in the newsletter. We've all been caught up in having our employee of the month. And so we wanted to make sure that she got announced at this meeting before it hit your inbox. And so you can expect that this afternoon and relive that great moment. That was so exciting. The last thing we have in case you missed it, was that Steve Williams reached out and had some really great things that he wanted to share and talk about as just a cool tool and resource. And so I'm going to actually give Steve a few minutes to talk and share about this great resource, and we'll let him take it from here. So Steve, the floor is yours.
Great. Hey, thanks, Marie. Thanks for giving me a few minutes. We're on spring break this week, and I just took a detour off the freeway. I'm somewhere north of Denver. I'm not sure the name of the town, but it looks like a cool place. This tool, the only reason I wanted to share it was because our teachers have loved it so much. And even teachers who have sort of been either PD skeptics, certain kinds of PD, or tech skeptics, have really liked this one. So I wanted to share it with the group. We got the grant through the STEM Action Center Professional Learning Grant. They covered the entire cost of this. It's a product called TeachFX, and I think it's there in the description. So the FX are the letters. And basically what it is a tool. It's an audio tool that they make available to the school, to the teachers. They download it on their phones, and it gives them the capacity to audio record a lesson of pretty much any length, from 5 minutes to a kind of a full period. They record the lesson, and what the tool does is monitor language in the lesson, language from the teacher, language from the class. It monitors vocabulary used, wait time between questions and responses, length of responses, length of questions, And it really gives the teachers a lot of really interesting data to look at the way they teach and the way they engage with their students and how their students are engaging with them. And the cool thing about it too, it's information that doesn't come back directly to us as administrators. It really goes to the teacher, and it's for them to use. So our teachers have used this in just personal analysis. They've done grade level team meetings where they've looked at it together as a grade level team or a discipline team, content area in the middle school. They've used it with their mentors, those that are new teachers and have a mentor they're working with, or an instructional coach. They've sat down and kind of analyzed the data together and made sort of some adjustments to their teaching. And it's just a really cool tool to help you see sort of quantitatively what's happening in your classroom as you teach. And it's been eye-opening for a lot of teachers to see how much time they spend talking versus how much time the kids spend talking, and also just the level of vocabulary and the kinds of questions that are being asked. It's a pretty good tool it actually does pick up most of what's said in the classroom. Sometimes it'll transpose a comment or a question, but it's pretty good at capturing what is said in the classroom. And so anyway, our teachers have liked it. We pay for the tool. Part of the grant covers that. And then we give our teachers a stipend, a professional development stipend for using it X number of times. I think we asked them to do it 6 times during the school year. And then the final requirement is for them to gather as a group and discuss kind of together what they learned from it and how they'll move forward. So, and they videotape that final conversation. So that's the tool, and it's something I would recommend to those who want to provide opportunities for their teachers to kind of look a little more closely at their practice.
Thank you, Steve. I love that idea, and even that ability that, sometimes as an administrator, it's hard to get out to all the classrooms. And so that's another way to provide feedback and, be able to kind of increase our capacity while letting, technology and an AI, I guess, help us with that.
Yeah.
So,
and I like people being in classrooms. I was skeptical of this at first, but like I said, the teachers have really liked it. And when I get a wide variety of teachers saying, hey, this is a cool application, I perk up.
it sounds neat. I'm thinking maybe I'll download it and get my own data for our meetings. So awesome.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the time. And if you have questions, you shoot me an email.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you sharing a great resource, and always love to hear from all of you when you've got good things to share. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna leave the meeting now. I apologize for that, but I've got people waiting, and so wish you all the best. Good end of the school year, and see you in May.
Drive safe. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's our In Case You Missed It section. And now we're going to get into our presentations. This meeting, if you've looked at our agenda, really has 2 big topics. We have Aspen Florence coming back, and she was with us in February and was able to talk about truancy and absenteeism. So she's doing a good follow-up session for us on that. So hopefully you brought some questions and problems of practice, and really we can dive deeper into how do we make this work in our schools. And then after her, we've got Michael and his team that are coming. Michael Hagren, I believe is how we say his name. He'll probably correct that if it's wrong. And they're going to be talking about how to bring competency-based education to your school and leading your school through that change to competency-based learning. And so this should be a great rest of the meeting. We're excited to have you here, and we will turn the time over to Aspen.
Okay, thanks so much for allowing me to come back. I am more informed on attendance than I was last time, so that's a huge win. And I have put in the chat, there's the slide deck for today, and then there's also a note-taking document for today. So the first is the slide deck. It has a bunch of links to it that you're going to want. And then also on the note-taking document is the link to the slide deck and vice versa. The note-taking document you're going to want to make a copy of for yourself so that you're able to obviously take notes on that and things along those lines. So we have an hour. So today's structure is going to be a little bit different than I usually like to give people lots of time to converse and to engage. And today I feel like there's a lot of information to share. So I'm going to do both. I'm going to try and share information, give you time to process, but also I wanted to give you a bunch of tools that you can use moving forward and kind of for your planning over the summer. I know schools are starting to put together their 90-day plans and 180-day plans, and I wanted to make sure you had all the information there. And I also apologize, my technology is not working great, so I don't have my USB-E background, so I apologize for that, and I hope that there's kind of grace given for that. So we will go ahead, and if you want to follow along in that slide deck, I'm gonna, I think I can share my screen, so that's a win. Let's see. I'll go ahead and share my screen so we can follow along on this, on the slide deck. And if you were able to, can you see the slide deck? Marie, can you give me a thumbs up if it's the slide deck that's showing right now? Perfect. Okay. So I sent out a survey last week, and I know a lot of people were on spring break, but I did get a fair amount of responses. And so today's structure is really based on what the feedback from that survey is. Know that there is a lot of other information, and if that's something that you feel like your LEA wants, like you need a different form of information, please use me as a resource. Things are shifting in attendance, and I'm right alongside you, and I want to make sure that I'm giving the right support to each LEA. So today we're really working on or talking about the foundational laws and intervention. So a lot of the feedback that I got was some of the laws have shifted and the role has shifted, and you're absolutely right, it has in the past couple months. And then also, you know, what can we and what can we not do based on intervention, and what are some of the research-based ways for that. And so that's what we're going to be working on for the next hour. Our agenda looks like this. So we'll do some housekeeping. We'll tend to the human. I think that that's also usually the most important part of keeping educators well, is tending to the human before we give a lot of content. We'll talk briefly about laws and procedure, and I'll give you some tools or places you can look at that. We'll talk about data evaluation, mostly for intervention. So that data evaluation is going to be on how do we choose intervention and how do we know if our intervention is working. We'll talk about some intervention planning, and then we'll also talk about DCFS and court referral. So those are some of the places I get the most questions from LEAs on. And I want to make sure that that's absolutely clear and that you have the tools that you need if you get to the point where you need to make a referral. And then we'll have some time for some next steps. Our housekeeping for today. So just our norms. I understand that you've been in a meeting for a bit. You're going to be in a meeting for a bit. I do want to say that TeachFX that you were just informed of, I use that all the time. It's fantastic. I cannot recommend it enough as a coach and as a teacher. So just FYI on that. But for today, for the next hour, I ask that you stay as engaged as you possibly can. I get that engaged looks different for everyone, and I know that our schedules are busy and that sometimes there's different things pulling us in different directions. But if you can stay engaged as much as possible, I think that it does us a lot of good for our wellness to be in one place at one time. Stay solution oriented. So attendance is tricky, and actually even on the survey that I sent, I got a lot of, sometimes it feels a little bit hopeless. We have students that it feels like there's lots of extraneous variables that are making it difficult for them to attend, and they're not necessarily variables that we have control over. And so today I want to recognize that there are those students, and I am hoping that we can start identifying the students that we can shift, and start with those students, and then we'll gradually move into the students that maybe have a lot of those really complicated issues. And I think that's going to take a lot of community support for us to figure that out. But I want to be sure that we're staying solution oriented. And if it's only one student that we're thinking about that we feel like we can make a shift with, then think about that student, think about those solutions there. And then just stay professional. So whatever professional language, professional engagement, professional thought process, whatever that looks like for you. So if you look at your note-taking document at the top, you do have a place to just say which one of those norms resonates with you today, which one's going to be maybe the most difficult for you to engage with, and what are some strategies around that maybe might work for you to be able to engage in that norm. Norms are really good to keep the learning space open and to make sure that we're ready to kind of engage and learn. So I'll give you just 1 minute to think about those norms and kind of internalize them for yourself for the next hour. Just about 10 seconds left on that thought process there. And then if you can just share in the chat, I want to make sure that my chat's working, just which norm resonated with you. So if you can quickly share in that chat so I can see what's resonating and what I should probably prioritize or reinforce today, that would be great. Thank you, Angie. Perfect. Okay, so it looks like our chat's working for some of us, so I appreciate that. Good, solution oriented looks like a big one, and that makes sense because it turns out attendance actually does not feel like there's a lot of solutions for it. So, thank you for thinking about that and engaging with that. We are going to do not so much partner work, but I'm going to try and get you into a little bit of group work and then some individual work and follow up. So those are our procedures today. Our learning targets. So this is by the end of today, I want for you to be able to reflect on your current data collection and intervention process. I want you to have some tools for those things. So I want to be clear up front. The tools that I'm giving are not like mandated tools. They absolutely are based on feedback that I've gotten, new statute that's taken place, new board rule that's kind of under review, and just making sure that schools you don't have to use it, but those are there for you to be able to use if you choose. And again, any type of technical support. Also, there's likely typos because turns out details aren't my thing. So if you pull those up and you want to use them, they are action research based tools, and so feel free to shift those as you need. I want you to reflect on your current evaluation process of intervention and gain some tools for your referral process, and then leave with an action plan for your best next steps. And so I really find with attendance, it really is what's our very best next step, not so much what are our end outcomes. And so we're going to be thinking about that. I want to pull you back to the USBE's kind of vision. So if USBE's vision says, upon completion, all Utah students are prepared to succeed and lead by having the knowledge and skills to learn, engage civically, and lead meaningful lives. And so I think that this is important to me as it relates to attendance, because if we know that attendance is highly correlated with students being able to do this. And so if the students aren't in school, especially by if they've hit 1 year of chronic absenteeism, the likelihood of them having more years of that's really high. And in 9th grade, actually, if they're struggling to attend in 9th grade, it's one of the highest predictors of school dropout. And so attendance really fits with this mission. And I think that it's always important to draw us back to kind of the strategic plan and the vision and mission of our individual LEAs, and then also the USBE. So our 10 to the human piece is just zone of control. I'm sure you've seen this before, but I want to take just a second to think about these different areas or zones of control. This is the most basic version of that visual. There's a bunch that can be used for like regulation lessons within our school setting, but attendance fits in these pieces. So if you were in the last presentation, we talked about there's actually 4 different layers of community that go with attendance. And we have our meso system, which is like the community that the student is raised in, and the policy and procedure that surround that. And then we gradually move into these areas and all the way down to the individual student and who they are. But I want you to just quickly think about what our zone of control is. There are things we can do for attendance, and it's easy to kind of start naming these things that either we have just influence over, so I can influence a student or a family, or there are things that I absolutely have no control over that I'm just going to have to let go of. And so I want you to think about how today, what strategy are you going to use to stay really in that thought process or areas that we do have control over. And so some things that I can think of off the top of our head is, we have control over our policy, we have control over our procedure, we have control over the culture of our school. To some extent, actually, we have influence over the culture of our school, right? We have control over if we're taking accurate attendance, things like that. So what strategy are you going to use to continually bring you back to just those items that we have control over, rather than the ones that we have influence or that we just need to absolutely let go of? So I'm going to give you just about 1 minute to think of how will we continually bring ourselves back to the items we have control over. What strategy are you going to use that way? Okay, so when we stay in that zone of control, we stay within our wellness, and we know that our ability to stay well in education is complicated. Our ability to stay out of burnout is complicated, and when we when we don't have efficacy around something because of that zone of control, it affects our wellness. This is the survey that results from what was given back to me. So the area that most needed or most participants wanted to be tended to is those attendance interventions, with some understanding of statute and rule. Not a lot of interest in teaming, not a lot of interest in data, in particular attendance policy. And so if those are areas that you do have interest in, I do have information on that, but today we're going to mainly focus on that attendance intervention piece. I do want to point out really quickly that for rule or statute and board rule, so board rule statute did change. So statute HB 400 came out and shifted statute a bit. On slide number 12, you can see the what of that statute, what changed and why it changed. I'm not going to take time to review that, but HB 400 is linked so that you can take time to review that. It just gave a little bit more responsibility to the USBE to provide support and a little bit more structure for schools to be able to engage with that. On slides 10 and 11, you can see the statutes that fall into attendance. So a lot of misconceptions about those statutes are we can't refer to DCFS and we can't refer to the courts. You absolutely can. Both of those are true. Anything that said we can't do that has sunsetted. And so, so we'll be talking about that a little bit today. And then board rule R277607 is up for a shift because of that change in statute, and that will be seen in board meeting this next month. And so you can kind of follow what that looks like. So I just wanted you to know where you can find statute that it does relate to attendance and absenteeism. One of the major changes in those is the shift in verbiage. So most of our statutes in the past just talked about chronic absenteeism and truancy. We're wanting to shift those statutes to talk about just student attendance. We want to promote attendance for students. Currently, only about 50% of our state's population attends, 95% or more. And so we absolutely want to promote attendance, not just respond to absenteeism or truancy. And so those are one of the major shifts in part of that legislation. I'm going to pause just in case there's any questions on those really quickly before we move on. I went through that really quickly because it wasn't what was asked for, but I did want you to have access to the changes there. Are there any questions? If you do have a question, go ahead and raise your virtual hand. Okay, looks like we're feeling okay. And also if you want to put something in the chat, that's great. Or if you want to message me separately, that's absolutely okay as well. Okay, so data evaluation. So here's where you're going to hit kind of your first tool. And I'm actually going to give you some time in a group to talk about this in a second. So I'm going to give you some information and then we'll move into some groupings. So this, first, this is an example of, these are examples of triggers for attendance intervention. And so lots of schools had questions around, when do we start intervening with kids? What does that look like? What's the best space? And so I spent some time going pretty heavily through the research. And one of the biggest trigger points is when a student's had 2 or more absences in that first 20 days of school. So that's one of the biggest indicators that they're going to continue to struggle with attendance if they've missed those 2 days within the first 20 days of school. Now that said, if we follow up and the student's on vacation or something along those lines, that's a little bit different. But that should be a trigger for you to follow up with that student as to why they're missing in that really prevention-oriented space. This is where it doesn't really align with statute. So statute's starting to indicate that when a student has 5 truancies, that's when we're going to want to start intervening. That's a little bit too late. So this is one of those biggest trigger points. The next one is the student hits the 10% threshold at any point in the school year. So 10% of the school days that have been in session, if the students miss 10%, whether that is excused or unexcused, that threshold is a good one for us to start looking into intervening with that student. Or when we just see that a student, especially in high school, is just starting to increase their frequency of absenteeism. And this is in high school in particular, because to have a missed day, a student has to miss 50% or more of that day. But we do have a lot of junior high and high school students that are missing class periods or having increased frequency of those class periods. So starting to monitor that increase in frequency of just missed class periods is important. Also, we want students on our radar that just have a history of chronic absenteeism. We know that if a student struggled with absenteeism in the past, the likelihood of them continuing to struggle without a shift in that trajectory is pretty high. The student has excessive tardiness. So sometimes they don't hit our radar because they're not absolutely missing full days or even partial days, but they're tardy a lot. That's still an issue, and we want to make sure we're addressing that. You also want to be looking for students that are missing in a pattern. So students missing every Monday or Friday or something like that. That's something that can be addressed. And then again, I really want you to look for tardiness, apparently. So that's on here. Again, we'll delete that. So those are some of your trigger points for just to know when to start intervening with a student. If you look up at data evaluation, there's a link here that I'm going to pull up. So this is just based on the research from the FBAT series, based on the research from just chronic absenteeism, attendance works, and the SEAC, so the Student Engagement and Attendance Center. This is a tool that you can use to start looking at where do we have areas of students that we can start intervening with that we actually do have control over? And so this helps us just kind of start disaggregating our data in ways that we can find opportunities for shifts that we do have control over. And so I'm going to explain this, and then I'm going to put you in a group to just kind of talk about how this might be useful. So this top part is just school-wide evaluation. So we want to know, are teachers actually taking attendance consistently? So that is one of the biggest kind of hurdles that some schools are struggling with, especially as we get into secondary, that teachers aren't taking attendance. And so we want to make sure that's our first thing. But then do we have monthly attendance percentages? Are there months that we can predict that are going to be a struggle spot more than other months? When we have full days during versus partial days of attendance, do we get more or less attendance on those days? I'm really concerned that we're going to see another dip in our chronic absenteeism this year, mostly due to the late starts due to snow this year. So I know a lot of students, after we have a 2-hour late start, they don't actually end up coming to school that day, partially maybe because their parents can't get them to school or other reasons. But do we see a trend in our full days versus partial days of attendance? Meaning partial days that we're actually in school, so a short day or a late start day. Do we have a difference in our daily percentages around holidays? So do students take an extended vacation and not come back the 2 days after a long holiday or something like that? Are there classes that are more readily missed, or are there days of the week that are more readily missed? So those are some areas that you can start looking at to say, does our schedule, like, are there predictable parts in our schedule that make attendance more or less likely for our student body as a whole? And then student identification. So this really gets into that intervention data piece. So part of what we have currently is we, as a state, we only have the data that shows that a student's missed 10% or more. But we've started breaking it down into these categories. So regular attenders, which are that 95% or above, our at-risk attenders, which are between that 90 and 95%. And then our chronic absenteeism between 80 and 89%. And then our highly at-risk students that are below 80%. These data points are important to start thinking about, because the bubble students are 90 to 95%. We're really going to want to start talking to and pushing. That's where our tier 1 attendance process really works for them. Our students between 80 and 89, kind of those tier 2 interventions really start to work. But then students below 80%, those are pretty intense interventions that are going to need to be taking place. And so there's a big difference between students that are attending 90%, 85%, and below 80. And so knowing which students fit into which categories is really important. Disaggregation by demographics is important. So we know our state data indicates that there's no difference in our gender, but there is a pretty big difference in students that have an ELL status and an IEP. And so we're looking at that. Also, grade is an important thing. This part I really like. So this piece is where I would start looking at for kind of control and different strategies. So the number of students that are not attending and are not academically succeeding. So who's not coming and who is not passing classes, versus students that are not attending but are academically succeeding. And so I quickly went through a couple of schools I have access to their data and started looking at this. And there's actually a fair amount of students that are not attending and are still doing academically okay. And that would be a very different deficit than the students who are not doing academically okay. So this would be, they're not finding class valuable enough to be present in it. And then we have students that are attending but are not academically succeeding. So students are still coming, but they're not doing well. That's a trigger point for a student that will likely stop attending eventually, because again, they're not doing, they're not able to engage in the way they want to. And then the number of students that are attending and are succeeding. And so this is kind of a good matrix to break our students down in and kind of identify what areas do we have a space for some control that way. Then students that have mostly excused versus unexcused. And then interventions, number of students on early stage interventions, number of students that are of interventions that are currently successful. Now is a great time of year to start evaluating those things, number of students on intense interventions and number of interventions of intense interventions that are currently successful. So I'm going to give you a second. I'm going to try and put you in groups. Let's see if it'll allow me to do that.
When do you want me to make you a co-host so you could do that?
If you can do that, I would appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I can do that right now.
All these
Okay.
extra, yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
There you go.
So I am going to put people into breakout rooms. We'll go. I know last time some people weren't able to join, and so we'll go about 6 participants in each breakout room, so that you'll probably have about 4 or 5. And I'm just going to give you 5 minutes to look at this sheet and maybe talk about. I don't expect all of this to be useful to you. I expect parts of it to be useful, or like, yeah, actually, I want to disaggregate just by this data piece. That would be interesting for me to know. Or guess what? Our data is not accurate enough or like easy enough to access to where it would be really hard to find this. And that's important for us to know. So I'm going to put you in for about 5 minutes so you can have some conversations around this sheet in particular. I did get some feedback last time that as people went into breakout rooms, they got off task a bit. And so I just asked that, going back to that kind of professionalism norm, that stay on task with your group so that you can really engage in that conversation. So I'll put you in, we'll go for 5 minutes and we'll see you. I will give a 1-minute countdown, just let it kick you out. So don't come back until it just kicks you back into this room, okay? Okay, thanks for engaging. I think we had about 3 rooms going. Thank you for engaging in those. I'm gonna ask for just some thoughts. We had rooms 2, 3, and 4. So if you were in room 2, I just some quick shares on what you guys talked about with as far as data disaggregation and choosing of students that might need intervention.
The problem is I don't think we remember our numbers.
You are room 2, so you did.
Oh,
nice
good.
job. Yes.
Perfect. All right, I'll just speak for our group then. So one thing that we talked about is that a lot of the issues we're having with attendance, and we're not seeing big attendance problems, but a lot of it is the parents who find great prices on flights to Disneyland in the middle of the school year. And so it's more of a matter of training the parents when the best time is to take their kids out of school or to not take their kids out of school at all, even though those flights are really good. And that's more of an issue than maybe like academic engagement or some of the other traditional truancy things that you see.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And in full transparency, I've been that parent at some point, right? And I think really thinking about if we decide that's our root cause based on some of these things, then how much do we let students make up work, and for how long, and what does that look like, and what are the effects where we're starting to kind of shift that? But for real, being in school, we don't want to make our teachers redo work forever just because you went to Disneyland, right? And so thinking about if that is the true root cause of what's happening, we might want to look at kind of the behavior management of that place. So good, thank you. Room number 3, Angie Rasmussen was in that room. To call her out.
Oh, you can call me Val. We just talked about the reasons why our kiddos are
better one, more defined one. You guys can see what happened.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
That's the problem with thinking. It's like, if I let him lose,
Someone else is unmuted.
Well, I'll just share. We just shared why people were absent and what they were, the reasons why, and one person in our group, I don't remember her name, she started sharing what she was doing at her school, and it was beautiful. They had an intervention group that were working with those kiddos who were super chronically absent, and she said it was working. And so anyways, and then we got booted out, but it was good to hear what her school was doing.
Awesome, perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. And group 4, I think Jill was in that group, actively engaged.
Yeah, sorry, I was eating my lunch in our breakout session. I'm still trying to eat it, but yeah, I'm with the high school, and I had a middle school and an elementary school member, which was great. And we talked a little bit about, it was important, just that very first piece on school-wide evaluation on number of teachers taking attendance consistently. One of our members talked about how she didn't feel like she had accurate data because a lot of times teachers weren't taking attendance, and then she had a system that didn't really didn't spit it back to her in the way she needed it. And so it was a little bit hard to use. So
yeah, and turns out having accurate, good data is part of the biggest thing that we're trying to engage in. So good, thank you for that reflection. Yeah. I do want to take a second really fast. I'm going to put this in the chat. If you didn't get this or you haven't seen this, I'm going to share it with you. So last year we did do the FBAT series, and it was less of a series and more of just a training. So the FBAT is through Safe and Civil Schools. It is to help kind of build some of these attendance-based systems. This year we're doing so for the next school year, we're doing a full series on it, meaning that you would get support on a by every other month basis. So good training, you'd get the full FBAT kit. and support around attendance, foundational attendance pieces, data collection, and then intervention. And so that's there. Applications for it are due. It's completely free, but there are some things in there that you'll want to think about if it's a good fit for your team. So I do want to point that out if you haven't seen that yet, that's there. So that has all the information there, and that will help with some of those pieces. After data evaluation, so you have that data evaluation sheet. After that is interventions. And so I'm going to show you a couple things. So this is an example of Ogden School District's flow chart for intervention. Maybe you've seen this before, but this is kind of their clear delineation of the process that they go through. So these are foundational pieces that they have in place to support attendance from the research. And then the green is indicative of those tier 1 plus strategies. So the tier 1 support sequences, they have a teacher tardy or attendance talk. Then the teacher makes a phone call home. So this would be about these 2-3 things would happen on that trigger point of 2 missed days in that first 20 days, or that 10% threshold. And so teacher tardy talk or attendance talk, phone call home, a friendly letter home. I'm working on some templates. So if you don't have a friendly letter home, I'm working on some templates that you can use. Then they would do a home visit or parent meeting. And then they do what's called an attendance 3P, which is actually just that attendance plan with the parent, student, and school to make a plan for attendance. Also working on a template for that. If those things don't work or we don't see a shift, then they're moving on to tier 2-3. They do an attendance goal setting intervention, attendance check-in, check-out, a youth court referral, and then an actual full-on functional behavior assessment of attendance, and then an attendance success plan, which is equivalent to a behavior intervention plan, but for attendance. And so I wanted you to have access to maybe a visual representation of that flow chart. This is very intervention based, but it's also data driven. And so they have really clear thresholds or cut points for when each of these would occur. And if you need support in creating this, that will be in that FBAT series that will come with that. And then other resources that you have for that. So the FBAT series, Check and Connect is one of the only research-based interventions that address chronic absenteeism. We do, as the USBE, do statewide trainings really consistently for Check and Connect. So for leadership as well as Check and Connect mentors. And so if that's a area that you would like to engage in, that's available. And we've shifted from it just being for youth in care, youth in custody, to that prevention side. And so we have about 40 mentors statewide that are using that right now. Early warning system. So if you're part of the Panorama pilot or you're using Panorama through the state discount, that has a really big support for attendance. And then also ULEAD is working on attendance-based briefs that are specific to Utah data. And so you'll be able to go in and see what schools are doing in Utah that's working for attendance. And then other resources, obviously the SEAC, Attendance Works. The book, School Leaders Guide to Tackling Attendance Challenges, is a great book study for your attendance team. And then absenteeism and truancy comes with that FBAT series. So I just wanted you to have those. Those are really great research-based ways that the USBE is supporting, and then other resources. But on slide 15, you have this intervention planning document. We briefly looked at this last time, and so I just wanted to pull it back up so that you had kind of this to start guiding how we're choosing intervention, especially based on that disaggregation of data below or from our previous slide. In this, as soon as it decides to load, this box that it has nothing in it actually does have something in it, and it's the 4 different areas of attendance deficit. So we talked about that before. So reasons a student may or may not be attending. So it could be that they have barriers. It could be that they have aversion issues, disengagement, or misconceptions about attendance. And so those come out of Attendance Works. But then below we listed possible actions that you can follow through with. So you could put on your support sequence, these are actions that fit on that support sequence. And then these are research-based interventions that fit on that support sequence. So if you haven't created your support sequence yet, these are the areas that match those deficits. And then there's an area to plan below. So I'm gonna try and we're gonna just go about, well, I'm gonna put you in a group and we'll see how many people actually join. So I would like you to look at this. So this comes from slide number 15, I believe is what we were just on. It's the attendance problem solving document has supports and interventions. I'm gonna go ahead and put you back into your rooms just for about 4 minutes to look and talk about the example of Ogden's support sequence and then the utilization of these within that. And we'll go for about 4 minutes in that space, and then we'll come back and action plan and end. Okay, welcome back. I'm not going to take time to listen to feedback, even though I feel really, it does not sit well with me to not finish the cycle, but I want to make sure we stay on time. The last piece that we have is just the court and DCFS referral process. So there's been lots of questions around that. Currently in statute, this is as it reads. So if the family fails to meet with the necessary authorities, or the student is truant 5 or more times during the school year, the local school board, charter school, governing board, or the school district shall report violation of this section to the appropriate county or district attorney and report to the Division of Child and Family Services. So the way that it reads would be if the student's truant meaning unexcused absences, 5 days, then we would send a letter. They would either have to engage with us or start sending their student to school. If the student is then truant again 5 more days, this is the shall piece. I do want to be transparent and say we are really working with DCFS and the court system to figure out, make sure our statutes match and better understand what that support looks like right now. But I wanted you to be aware of what that looks like. On slide 20, I have put in kind of 2 different documents that help. A lot of feedback I got was, we're referring to DCFS and DCFS is saying, well, we're not actually getting the right documentation, or they're not sending us the complete documentation, or they're sending us too much documentation. So Susie, good question. So there's kind of 2 different statutes. So compulsory education is for our students grades 1 through 6. And then, but the students all the way up to, I believe, 9th grade can be referred to both spaces. So DCFS usually goes up to 6th grade, and then, but the court system would be, could be span that whole place. And really, I'm struggling to answer the question a bit because that's under review as far as who they will and won't accept and what the different supports look like. But I would stick with that. Compulsory education, grades 1 through 6 goes to DCFS, and then our court system would go grades 7 through 9 in that space. This first document that you have here is the attendance intervention documentation. So when you refer to either a court or to DCFS, they're going to ask what your intervention sequence has been. And so this, if you fill this out, this should help with that. So again, you do not have to use this. If you have your own form, by all means, use your own form, but this meets requirements for what that looks like. So this is how we would track different, what is our attendance data, and then what interventions have we tried. They're currently asking for 2 documented tried interventions, and then you would send 2 letters. So a first letter, and then the second letter, which is given by personal service or certified mail, as the statute states. So this is the attendance support intervention document. The other document that you have in here specifically matches that compulsory education statute, and it's all the questions that must be met in order to, or all the criteria that must be met in order to make a referral. So this just walks you through a bunch of those questions. Did you send a letter? Have you adjusted your curriculum or a schedule? Have you met with taken the family's recommendations into account? Did the family ask for resources? Is the student 2 or more years behind? We just have to report whether or not that's true. That's not a requirement that they have to be 2 or more years behind. So, but we do want to report that. Are they falling behind academically? Do they have an IEP? Do they have a 504? Did you complete an intervention sequence, which is that other form? Did you send a notice of compulsory education? And then after you sent that notice, were they truant 5 or more times after that? Okay. So these are just forms to help. It's been a pretty convoluted, tricky process with COVID and then the moratoriums. And so again, if you already have your own process, please use that. I do want to be clear, DCFS, currently it is a shall. So we do have to report that after the 10th unexcused absence. Truancy is only if it is an unexcused absence. Okay, so excused absences do not count that way. What you can expect when you refer is either they might do a possible investigation, or they possibly might offer supports to the family. DCFS does not, this is not a chargeable offense unless it's met with other offenses. But they do go to the home and they do offer support. The reason this is important is it helps the other agencies determine the level of prevention support. Meaning, we're getting a lot of these cases. Maybe we should have a space for some prevention support for these families that's not reaction or responsive support. And then also we want to know how many students are currently meeting the referral threshold for that. So this is a long process. I understand it takes a lot of time and effort, and I understand sometimes it's frustrating when we feel like it didn't really change the outcome for our students. I'm aware of that. I work in schools daily, and I understand that. And we're working to shift the process to where it is beneficial, but it's hard to do that if we're not making the referrals that need to be made or running the interventions that need to be had prior to that. So you should have access to both those documents. I hope. Let me make sure. It looks like there were some people on them, so you should have access. So you'll just want to make a copy of them and again, they're probably going to shift. These are brand new as of last week, based on the feedback that you all gave me from the survey. And so they're still kind of in that action research stage. So you know, use it as you will. Aside from that, I am what time is it? We have about 5 minutes left. So the bottom of your note-taking document has just some action planning. So just some quick things on what documents do I want to use. So I think I gave you about 6 different documents that you have access to. If there are any that are beneficial, write them down. What is something you don't want to forget? What is something you want to share maybe with your attendance team or, you know, your children, I don't know, your best friend, doesn't matter. What are your best next step? One best next step within 48 hours, and then best next step by the end of the week. And so I'll give you just about 2 minutes to do that. Just start thinking through those, and then we'll come back. I'll ask you to complete a survey, and then we'll convene. So 2 minutes to kind of plan right now. I'll stop talking. Okay, so I had a couple questions in the chat as far as which court do you refer to? Let me check on that, actually. So that is tricky with students, like your school being in one boundary and students living in another court boundary. Let me check on that and I'll respond to all as far as that process. And then for DCFS, according to DCFS, you would submit both of those pieces, and that would trigger at least a home visit from DCFS. I would like to know if you do submit that and that is not the case, because we're really trying to fine tune that process. And so I would love feedback on what happens when that occurs, if at all possible. So our last piece is there's a survey at the end. These surveys absolutely help me better understand if this was useful or not, and then also what additional supports are needed to take place. So if you can complete that survey, that would be great. And I'll continue to look at the questions in the chat. So go ahead and pull up that survey if at all possible. Not if all, do the survey. That's a directive, but it's helpful. So go ahead and complete that survey and I'll look at the questions in the chat and then we'll transition.
It's still saying that you need permission. Sorry.
Okay, it's better now. Sorry about that. Thank you. So refresh it. Yeah, and I'll answer that question in the chat. Maria, I am done. So go ahead and transition as you feel necessary. Sorry for going a couple minutes over.
Oh, that's perfect. No problem. Thank you, Aspen. All right, we appreciate that and appreciate you taking Aspen's survey to give her some great feedback. We will transition over to Michael and his team. Michael, I appreciate you putting the pronunciation in the chat. Let's see, Hakkarainen.
Yeah, very close. Nice. I'll give you an A for effort. But this is my fault. Normally, whenever I'm asked to present, we do like a fluency and pronunciation coaching session ahead of time, and I forgot to schedule that with you, but
I will have to work on that for our next presentations.
it's okay. It's pronounced Hakkarainen.
I was so close. Okay.
Yeah. And it's a
Hakkarainen. I
Finnish
got
name,
it.
which is ironic because we're just getting started. But would love to share with everybody and also say thank you so much, Marie, for allowing us to present. Would it be okay if I become co-host and share my screen?
Absolutely, we can do that. Let me make
Okay,
you
thanks.
the co-host. Let's see. Make co-host. There you go.
Awesome. And here's what we're going to be talking about, everybody. PCBL for the Utah Charter School Board, leading your school through PCBL change. Now, just want to get a thumbs up. You can all see that, correct? Thank you, Marie. And let me pull up the chat real quick because I would love to share with you a link to this presentation if you would like it in viewer mode. There it is. That way you can move through it as well or use it in the future in one of your presentations. Today I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Dr. Quinn Kellis, who is the Technology Supported Learning Coordinator, TSL. He'll be presenting here in about an hour, talking about the role of leadership in this PCBL change. And also Katie Hill, who is our technology, oh, that's wrong. She's actually the coordinator for our quality instruction team. So I think Katie probably has this open on her screen. If you want to go ahead and edit that, that'd be awesome. I did a little copying and pasting too fast. If you have any questions as we're presenting, please put them in the chat. Katie and Quinn are both here, and I'll be then also helping to monitor the chat, and we'll answer questions. Whenever you have one come up, please don't hesitate. Put it in the chat, we'll address it. And then Katie, if there's something that comes up that you want me to stop, just unmute and tell me, hey, slow down, talk about this, because after I talk about our strategic plan, portrait of a graduate, and personalized competency-based learning, which is what PCBL stands for, if you were wondering, Katie's going to then take over and talk about the role of coaching, and then we'll turn it over to Quinn, who will talk about the administrator's role in this shift. Okay, so before I dive into portrait of a graduate or PCBL, I like to do a little history lesson, and this is about NEA's Committee of 10 and their recommendations. Do me a favor, if you've heard of this, put a thumbs up on your screen. If you've heard of the NEA Committee of 10. All right, I'm looking around. I got the gallery view open. You know what? I don't see. Oh, Jason has heard of it. Just one person. Okay, well, just to give you a little bit of background, I learned about it from this book called The American School, which I read in 1998. It's written by Joel Spring. And here's basically what happened. The NEA, the National Education Association, sat down and said, hey, what is it that students really need in order to be successful if they're going to go to college? What should the public school system be preparing them for? And they brought together 10 leaders from higher education institutions from all over the country, Michigan, Colorado, Boston, and even a couple public school leaders from places like Albany, and I think Boston as well. And what they came up with was this, a slide with a lot of text on it. So I'm not going to ask you to read all of this or read over it for you, but I will break it down for you. This is what the NEA Committee of 10 recommended that public school should provide for students. First of all, 12 years of education were recommended, with 8 years of elementary, followed by 4 years of high school. Sounds exactly like our public school system, right? That's what we've got. 12 years. I mean, we've added kindergarten and pre-K, but you get the idea. Next up, every subject which is taught at all in a secondary school, that would be high school, should be taught in the same way and to the same extent to every pupil so long as he pursues it, no matter what the probable destination of the pupil may be or at what point his education is to cease. I'm looking around and I don't see a lot of video cameras on, but I was expecting to see like some furrowed brows. Does anybody have any issues with this statement? I see Brett's camera just came on. And is that a furrowed brow, Brett? Yeah, okay. All right, there's some problems with this, right? First of all, it refers to the student as he. But look at this, taught in the same way and to the same extent to every pupil, so long as he pursues it, no matter what the probable destination of the pupil may be. So every student gets the same instruction, no matter where they're headed. Thumbs up or down on your video if you agree with that. Yeah, okay. One more thing. They recommended, these recommendations were basically generated and interpreted to mean English, mathematics, history, or civics, and that every student should receive this in every academic year in high school. They also recommended chemistry and physics and ascending order as you went through the high school academic years. Again, very similar to what we have today. Here's the problem. I read about the Committee of 10 in 1998, but it actually happened in 1897. And here's a picture of the 10 thought leaders that they brought together. You can notice they all have something in common. One of them has I think, a Confederate or a Union uniform on. So he was a veteran. And then you can also see there's a tombstone. One of them died. It took them 4 years to come up with this process. But is it concerning to you that what was recommended to prepare students for college and public school in 1893 to 1897, the 4 years that they worked on this, is almost exactly what we have today? There's a little bit of a problem. If you look at that focus, it was all about the academics, right? Everything was all about what the students know. There was nothing to indicate who they're becoming, right? The focus is on the academics, not on the students. And so you're going to hear me today say things like student-centered and learner-centered. And what I mean by that is that is our objective in education, not the stack of books or the list of standards or the subject areas that need to be mastered, but the actual learner. And that parallels what we've set up as our vision. Now, Aspen just pointed this out earlier, and I'm going to repeat it because I think it's worth being repeated. But our vision here at USBE is that upon completion, all students are prepared to succeed and lead by having the knowledge, right, academic mastery, but also the skills to learn, engage civically, and lead meaningful lives. And this is what's at the root of our Portrait of a Graduate. If you have your phone or your iPad or any device with a camera, you can scan that QR code or go to tinyurl.com/UtahPOG 2023. And that will bring up our Portrait of a Graduate if you haven't actually seen that before, or we can throw a link into the chat. And yes, it does sound like a secret society, Katie, that Committee of 10. So this is our focus, and it all came out of the Portrait of a Graduate, which, we spent years developing. But we basically identify characteristics, not just skills or standards of knowledge, but actual characteristics of who we want our graduates to be when they finish K-12 system, whether they go to higher ed or directly to a career or into the military or into another form of service. It doesn't matter where they go, and they're not going to get the exact same instruction like the Committee of 10 recommended. They're going to get a more personalized learning experience. Now, this Portrait of a Graduate, you might hear things like, wow, this was created by KnowledgeWorks. That's not really true. KnowledgeWorks helped us create some focus groups and actually go about gathering this input. But who created the Portrait of a Graduate? Here's your list: 20 different stakeholder meetings. We had online focus groups, competency-based education advisory groups. We had agency specialists from here at USBE, charter school directors. We went to Weber State and talked to some of their freshmen. You name it, it goes across the board here, from legislators to small business leaders to faith-based leaders. Everybody in Utah from all 6 corners, and yes, if you count them, there are really 6 corners of Utah, came together to help us identify what exactly are these characteristics. And these are the ones that came up in the most important qualities. And if you look through here, you'll see words like problem solver, skills, hard work, good character, life, thinking, ability. You don't see things like math, history, civics, language arts, right? Instead, we see characteristics. Now, a whole bunch of work went into then taking these characteristics, these qualities, and putting them into what we call the MAP: mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And another way to say it, mastery is the knowledge and the skills. Autonomy is also skills, but those like 4 C's. And then purpose is who we are in character and citizenship, what guides us in our life decisions and influences our behavior, shapes our goals, gives us a sense of direction, creates us a meaning in life. Now, here's just a pop quiz question to see how many avid readers we have out there. But does anybody recognize this mastery, autonomy, and purpose from a very famous book written about 10 years ago? Is it ringing a bell for anybody? Put it in the chat if you know what it is. We'll come back to that. Now, this MAP, mastery, autonomy, and purpose, or knowledge, skills, and dispositions, can be broken out into 13 specific characteristics. There are 5 in mastery. These are things that we actually teach, the content, the curriculum, academic mastery, which is tested and assessed. But then you also have wellness in there, civic, financial, and economic literacy, and digital literacy. This is our mastery, the knowledge. Underneath of that in yellow are the characteristics that define autonomy. And this is really key to personalized competency-based learning, which we'll get to in a second. But communication, critical thinking and problem solving, creativity and innovation, collaboration and teamwork. I heard a teacher actually from St. George, I just forgot his name, I will find it later, said something really interesting at an ed camp a couple weeks ago. He said, I teach civics, I teach history, I teach geography, but I teach those things so the students learn communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity. So we use that blue section as the vehicle to help our students develop what you see there in yellow. And then over in green, purpose, what's guiding our life decisions, who we are, honesty, integrity, responsibility, hard work and resilience, lifelong learning and personal growth, service and respect. Now, common misconception is that, oh, we're going to grade those things just like we grade the blue area. You can give an A, B, C, D, or F to somebody in their history class, but we don't grade honesty, hard work, service, and respect. Those aren't things that are measurable. And it's really hard to measure some of these skills down here in the autonomy section. But students should have the ability to develop these skills and learn about themselves through the process, and maybe they're assessing their own purpose. And that's part of that lifelong learning growth mindset. This is very different than what the Committee of 10 presented, right? And so it requires a different type of teaching. What worked with someone standing at the front of the room and lecturing for 45 minutes and being able to say, well, I told you all the things you should know, so check the box, I'm done, now it's your turn. You didn't get it? Too bad. That's not going to work in an environment that is not teacher or curriculum centered, but learner centered. And so we are shifting, and I use the word shift because I know the title of this presentation is Change to PCBL, but I think what you're going to find is it's really not a very big change. When we dig into this, you'll see that you're doing a lot of these things already. So it's not so much a change as an evolution or a continuing evolution. So now that we're teaching to Portrait of a Graduate, not to a test or a mandated curriculum, how do we make this shift to a teacher-centered environment, from content-centered to skills-centered, from testing knowledge to demonstrating skills, from lessons to learning experience, and from grades to feedback? And that's where PCBL comes in. And again, is it really a change, or is it just an evolution? If you were to go and look at the PCBL definition in our Utah State Legislature, and this is code, by the way, this was law, you'll find this: educators engaging all students with high expectations for shared learning goals and empowering each learner to take ownership of their strengths, needs, and interests while tailoring flexible supports to maximize student growth and competency. That's really wordy. By the way, here's a hint: the book about mastery, autonomy, and purpose, Daniel Pink. Okay, see if you can think of the title. So how can we define this in a way that it makes a little bit more sense? Like if I was a parent and I asked you as a teacher or administrator to tell me what is PCBL and you said that, my eyes would glass over, probably go into like a low grade coma. But if you said this, personalized competency-based learning empowers students in developing the knowledge, skills, dispositions defined in Utah's Portrait of a Graduate. That makes sense. The Portrait of our Graduate, and here in our agency, we refer to this as our North Star, right? If the Portrait of a Graduate is the North Star, PCBL is maybe the prime meridian, or better yet, the compass. It helps us direct what we're doing towards that goal. But it's something we can move around and explore, just like you would if you were on a pathway or using a compass, but it keeps you in that direction. And we've identified it as one of our 4 main goals in our strategic plan. You'll see right up here, personalized teaching and learning. Each student and educator has access to personalized teaching and learning experiences. So not only do we hope to achieve an environment where the teachers are teaching in this student-centered or learner-centered environment, but that you as educators have a personalized experience in your professional development and professional learning. So if you've seen things like micro-credentials and competencies and some of the courses you're taking, welcome to PCBL. That's all part of that movement. And if we sort of go in and unpack this personalized teaching and learning, again, a lot of text on one slide, you'll see 4 goals within here. Now, remember those really cool books from the 90s that you would like hold close to your face and then just kind of pull it away slowly and let your eyes focus and you see like a floating violin or something like that? Nobody's with me? Katie turned off her camera. She's like, I don't know what he's talking about. Stare at the screen for just a second and then look at that. Personalized competency-based learning pops right out at you. 4B, create structures and supports defined in Utah's Portrait of a Graduate. Personalized competency-based learning experience in 4C. And then again, partnering with technical colleges and higher ed to align personalized competency-based learning across post-secondary success. And that's one thing we're working on right now, working with Mastery Transcript Consortium to make a transcript that students can use when they apply to higher ed that focuses on their skills and experiences, not just a grade point average or one single score, which doesn't really tell us a lot. Now let's look into personalized competency-based learning. And here's an option for another link. You go to tinyurl.com/USBE-PCBL. I'll pull it up right here, actually. I look it up a lot. There it is. We have a nice PDF for you. Thank you, Katie. Or if you don't like tiny URLs, you can go here. Now, this is a government document, so you're going to see a lot of wasted paper or PDF pages. So page 1 has our title with our beautiful puzzle piece. And I just want to point this out. This is like things coming together, but not linear, right? There's no particular order to how this is done. Everything builds on itself. And it's our students who are putting it together. But scroll all the way down to page 13, and you'll see the essential components of personalized competency-based learning listed right here. There are 5 of them. And what I'd like you to do is to take a minute to read over them or look at the slide I have here. And what do you see that you are already embracing in your, I shouldn't say concurrent enrollment, but what are you already embracing in your learning community? This is what happens when you copy and paste slides, guys. There you go. What is it you're already embracing? And I'll just model some awkward Zoom wait time as you put some answers in the chat. Nobody got the book. It's Daniel Pink's Drive, by the way. If you read that, that's kind of like a handbook to Utah's Portrait of a Graduate. Okay, that was a couple minutes and the silence is deafening. It's okay. Let's look at some of these and then maybe some things will pop out to you. And what I'd like you to do is whenever you hear something or see something or some examples of personalized competency-based learning and some, thank you, Hanifi, social emotional learning, definitely. It's a key concept in everything we're doing in education, not only in Utah, but around the country right now, and perfect timing. But if something pops up that you're like, oh, wait, we do that, please brag about it, highlight it, throw it into the chat at any time. Now, if you're in that document that I just showed you and we linked in the chat, as you scroll through it, you're going to see that each one of these components is sort of broken down with these little charts to kind of make it easier to understand what we mean by, for example, culture of learning. In the top box, you'll see a clear definition, and it doesn't have too many acronyms or too much teacher chalk, but it should just pretty much point out to you. And if you look at this one long enough, you'll see like, oh, high expectations, teacher clarity, success criteria. We do that, right? And allowing each learner to define their pathway to success. And then underneath of the definition, in the evidence-based practices, we've divided into two columns. On the left are educators, and this is actual evidence-based practices, research-based. You'll see Hattie's effect size there for things like teacher estimates of achievement, 1.46. And I always get kind of messed up with these effect sizes. The way I understand it is like a 0.5 is like 1 year's growth of students. So 1.46 would be like 3 times that, right? And teacher credibility would be twice, and success criteria and teacher clarity are like 1.5. It's a big improvement in student learning when we employ these evidence-based practices. And then on the student side, you'll see some evidence-based practices for them, like curiosity, transfer strategies, prior ability, and enjoyment, happiness, all these things. That's how that's broken down. And then on the next page, I just want to point this out one more time, evidence-based practices. If you hear someone ever say like, oh, PCBL isn't research-based, well, the acronym, the new sort of like movement hasn't been around long enough to be researched. And it's come out in response to a pandemic when we had to shut down schools. So the data might not be like very conclusive of anything, but PCBL is based on evidence-based practices. So yes, it is research-based, and it does have a positive impact on student learning. Then if you look down at the next part, you'll see conditions for success. This is what PCBL looks like. And then underneath of that, family supports for success. These are just characteristics that begin at home and then are cultivated in the educational setting. So we're not saying that parents should be PCBLing at school. First of all, PCBL is not a verb, so you can't be PCBLing. But we're just pointing out like, hey, when your students are learning in this different environment, asking them, what did you do in school today? Doesn't really tell you what you want to know. But when you communicate with educators and you collaborate with school staff and community members and talk about what's happening with school improvement, and you engage with your students and talk about their strengths and help nurture their growth, I'm always PCB yelling, that's funny. That's when you can start to have real dialogue about what's happening with your students in school. So these are just suggestions on how families can communicate. And we're going to take a tour of what PCBL looks like in Utah schools and identify examples to each one of these components. And while we do this, I'm going to have a couple more questions for you to answer in the chat. And then we're also going to do like a little group activity in a slide deck, and might even have a Padlet in there. So let's start with the first one, cultivating a culture of learning through communities committed to creating the conditions for students to develop those knowledge, skills, and dispositions. And this can look different in the classroom, in the district, or the state. And you may have some examples that you will see in some of the charter schools and districts around Utah that don't even use the acronym PCBL. If you go to the Washington Fields Intermediate School in St. George, they have something they call the charter process. And you'll see this in every one of their teacher staff development rooms and in the offices. This is just how they go about their week. They have a purpose, a vision, their commitments. They identify essential standards and skills. There's your clarity. proficiency, they teach, they do student self-assessments first, then they have a common formative assessment. And that's all done on Wednesday and Thursday of each week. And then Friday, they provide extra time and support for student learning. And then to the right of that poster, inspiration, ideation, and implementation is from Launch High School in Cedar City, a magnet style program that brings students together for project-based learning experiences. They have maker spaces and all kinds of incredible things going on. And that's their culture. Inspiration, ideation, implementation. We highly encourage, and not only every district and every LEA, but every school to think of their own culture. JUAB, for example, has their own portrait of a graduate. You'll see some common language to ours, and Iron County has theirs as well. They go by their Essential 8. It's funny that they created theirs before the state created a portrait of a graduate, and then as soon as we did, they said, oh no, do we have to change ours? Absolutely not. Again, if your charter program is creating its own portrait of a graduate or profile of a learner, that's exactly what we're looking for, something that is specific to your community, that's personalized to what your parents and students are looking for. Duchesne County just introduced theirs a couple of months ago, and they actually have two versions. One for students on the left there, you see knowledge, skills, and dispositions. But then on the one on the right, that's the portrait for their staff. What are they providing? Etiquette, environment, education, high expectations. A lot of crossover, but it's unique to their district and their community. And they actually went out and had their community help create this. And then if you go to Alpine, Timpanogos High School, this is really, this gives me chills. I love this. Each teacher, instead of having those like course disclosures that nobody really reads, but they just check on Canvas that they did, they created portraits of a student for each of their class, and they aligned them to their 6 C's: creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, communication, citizenship, and character. That's what Alpine identified as what they're looking for their students and their graduates to possess. And so you'll see a portrait of a student in calculus might have very different skills and dispositions than a THS government student. And then science might have different, ways of teaching critical thinking than you would in art. So it's really cool that the teachers have identified exactly who they're helping their students become in the process of learning in their classrooms with these portraits of a student. Okay, now I'd like to get some feedback from you guys. What challenges, what barriers might exist that you would anticipate if you're shifting your community's culture of learning to something personalized and competency-based? Where do you think you would find some pushback? And I'll mute myself again and give you a good solid minute to answer that. I didn't bring gift cards, but I should have. I'll tell you what, I'll give gold stars to the first 3 people who respond. Jennifer Blaine, thank you for sharing. You're one person who responded, which is 100% improvement over our last one. Shannon, 2, awesome. Parents are definitely hesitant to change sometimes. Oh, there is a gold star. Anything that's new can be uncomfortable. Very good. Yeah, any type of change. So here's an idea. Let's not promote this as change. This is an adjustment. This is growth. This is evolution. And Jennifer, regarding your point about teachers feel like they have to make a different lesson plan for each child. That was my reaction, gosh, in 2010, when the principal of the school I was teaching 5th grade in said, we're going to do differentiated instruction. Whoa. You're going to see here in a minute that that's not the case, because we're going to be talking about learner agency. And Jason, you are absolutely correct. Reflection, documentation, and communication takes time. I mean, do you mean like as far as shifting your culture with your parents, or like the actual educators' work of reflecting, documenting, and communication? Either way, definitely implementation. All right, so learner agency. This is where we're going to figure out how Portrait of a Graduate really is connected. Remember where we wanted our students to develop autonomy? That means like being self-directed learners and being kind of co-creators in this learning experience. Just because you have 30 different learners in your room with 30 different skills and strengths and weaknesses doesn't mean you have to make 30 lesson plans. What you need to make is one lesson plan that allows students to find their individual entry point and way of demonstrating competency. And you put that extra layer of responsibility on them. Here's an example of activity where students are asked to pick. How do you want to learn about planet properties? Do you want to watch a video, come work with a teacher in a small group, read a chapter? What is your learning style today? And then how are you going to apply what you learned? So we give them this opportunity to take ownership of their learning, which helps build that autonomy. This is an example of a math classroom in Davis School District, Sunset Junior High. And first of all, I want to point out that you see 3 students working on a stand-up dry erase board. I'll tell you what, I've been in ed tech for like almost 20 years, and I've never felt more strongly about this. If you're going to spend money on anything in your classroom, buy stand-up dry erase boards. Students interact and they're more engaged when they're standing. I'm standing right now. And as a teacher, when you look around the room, you can see the work that they're doing because it's up high. You have to creep over their shoulders and look down at desks. So they're working together. They decided to work in a group. And then you see other students who are working together because they might like being around each other, even though they might be in different parts of the lesson, but they can move through the lesson at a different pace because they have their own device. In this case, it's an iPad. They can demonstrate their work, their teacher can give them immediate feedback, and they can collaborate with each other as they go. So you need to give them some agency, some freedom in the classroom in order to develop that autonomy. Now, I bet this is one where everybody's probably going to answer. Have you had any self-directed learning experiences of your own recently? And I'll give you an example. Headlight on my Tacoma burned out. I could have gone to Toyota and had them replace it, or like one of those auto parts store, but I just jumped on YouTube to see how hard it was and was able to then go out, buy the lamp that I needed and replace it on my own. And as I sat there trying to figure it out, I had to rewind and fast forward the video a couple times and then zoom in on some of the pictures of like the springs and stuff. But I was able to teach myself using the web how to change my headlight. Give me an example of something that you may have learned recently that was self-directed, or you learned at your own pace, or when you wanted to learn it. Great examples. Thank you, Angie. Online class, planning your vacation, Shannon. Where'd you go? And signing a PDF on your iPhone. That's always tough. Anything on an Apple, though, you can use Preview. Great examples. We have the technology to allow students to learn at their own pace and not at the pace that we dictate by standing in front of the room. Like, oh, Peru, wow. Like what happened in our committee of 10. Okay, I'm going to jump through a couple things kind of fast just to make sure we have enough time. Demonstrated competency and assessments is a really big one. This is also one of the ones you're going to hear the most pushback because people are going to say, what? No more traditional grades? No one's saying you have to get rid of traditional grades. But what we're saying is that students need to have multiple attempts to demonstrate their learning, multiple forms of assessments, of different formative assessments, and they need to have access to their data because the data is more important to them than really anybody else. They need to know where they are on their learning. With grading policies, this is just something that creates so many fights and arguments and distrust. This is my favorite quote here. Students are very much aware that school is a game and that your grades aren't based on how well you understand something, but on how well you play the game. And we often have found that, we put a lot of value on grades, but they're not an adequate form of feedback. It's no good to get this feedback when you're done the learning experience. You need it while you're on the path. And then there's this question about, well, what's the relationship between education and grades? And could an educational model be effective without grades? Could we go from ranking and sorting students to instead focusing on feedback? I'm going to jump to this, this real quick. 3 reasons that grades are bad for education. Number 1, they create risk-averse behavior. Oh, I'm going to take this class because it's an easy A and it'll help my grade point average. Or I'm not going to go to honors or GT because it might be harder. We also have focused on grades as the end goal. And like I said, they're not an adequate form of feedback. We need to stop ranking and sorting our students and instead giving the feedback they need while they're learning. This data can be dangerous because a lot of times we define people and our learners based on the data we get. Take a look at this. This is concerning. Well, not concerning, but maybe. This person is a male, born in 1948, raised in the United Kingdom, married twice, lives in a castle, and is wealthy and famous. Hope you all didn't jump ahead in the slide deck that I shared with you, but do you know who this is? Put it in the chat or call it out. Everybody, don't say Prince Charles. King Charles, right? Or I guess he'll be coronated next month. But everything I just described there also perfectly identifies Ozzy Osbourne. Now, are these two people very similar? They couldn't be more opposite, right? So we have to be really careful that we don't attach the personas of our students to like grades and data and demographics, but instead think about your learners and the problems and the challenges that they face and the accomplishments they've made. That's who they are and who they will become. So demonstrated competency and assessment is actually, it's just about grades to feedback. That's where our educators' focus should be shifting, from grades to feedback, because it's not how smart the students are that matters, but how they are smart. And now on the learner side of things, we want them to go from winning to thriving, right? It's not about getting a high GPA. It's about learning as much as you can about the things that are important and of interest to you. And this new layer of responsibility, this instead of the teacher having to write 30 lesson plans, the teacher is still creating one learning experience, but the students take on this new layer of responsibility, this self-awareness, this growth mindset and grit in order to find their entry point and show how to demonstrate competency. While this is happening, they're going to often have to ask for help. So we want to provide appropriate and timely customized supports to engage students and ensure equitable access to high quality instruction. This can mean a variety of things. In the left picture, you see an example of groups that are set up based on certain skills. And so the students look at that and they say, oh, I'm working on sentence structure or identifying author's purpose, so I'll go to table 2. And then you see students over here on the right might be working with, instead of an iPad, the iPads are all closed, but now they're working together using some strips that they have cut out that help them with problem solving, and then they can apply it on the dry erase board. So there need to be supports in place, but what's key is, how do students know what the supports are and how do they ask for it? So here's where I want to get some more feedback from you, but not in the chat. What are some supports that are currently in place in your learning community? And what's nice about this is you don't have to put your name on here. You can do this anonymously if you like, but this is a link to a Padlet. And when you get to a Padlet, you'll probably be like, oh, that's a cool picture of the Bixby Canyon Bridge over by, where's that, Monterey Bay, that kind of area. But if you want to add a thought, you come down here to this little pink plus symbol in the circle, and you click on it. And then you put in, your subject, like what is a support that you might have in place? You could say like peer tutoring or something like that. And you can write something fantastic underneath, or you can add a picture, upload a file, put in a link, search for an image. And then there's some other attachment types. And then when you're happy with it, you just click publish, and it'll put a little post-it note on here. So if you take a couple minutes and put in some examples of supports you currently have in place in your learning community for students. I see some ants working up here at the top, so I'm going to give you another minute to get in some ideas, share some supports that you have in place for student success in your learning community. Now there's a whole bunch of ants. Go ahead and keep working on that and adding your supports. And while you do, I'll get started wrapping up. And if you wouldn't mind, Marie, could you make Katie and Quinn also co-hosts, because they're going to be sharing their screens here in just a couple minutes.
You got it.
Yeah, so as you're working on the Padlets, customized supports, students need to know that they have access to peer tutors, that they can come after school for tutoring. Teachers need to know that professional learning is available, and they need to know what it is because they need to be able to ask for it. I love it. Individualized opportunities for demonstration of learning. Perfect. How do we ask for help? It's tough. Well, that's where social and emotional learning comes in. Tier 1 and Tier 2 opportunities, I love it. And ability grouping. Students attend reading and math groups. They receive the support interventions and enrichment based on what they need. They are learning and growing. Ability grouping makes me a little nervous just because I want to make sure that students are grouped in a way that is not a rut or a track, but is a path that they can move about, and that it's flexible ability grouping, because one day a student might need extra support, and then the next day in the exact same class on the exact same topic, they suddenly need enrichment. So as long as students are able to move throughout that with that flexible grouping, that is definitely an example of personalized competency-based learning. The last one, social emotional learning. This is where the students need to develop those skills to overcome challenges, to achieve success that tenacity, that grit, that self-reliance, that ability to ask for help. And sometimes it's that ability to ask for a break. And here we have a perfect example of a quiet area in an elementary school classroom where students can go and have a place to learn when they need to take that break. I've shown you examples of schools from around Utah. You're probably wondering, what's this look like when the kids get to higher ed, right? Well, here's an example of PCBL in a medical school. At the Oregon Health and Science University, they realized that their typical applicant was no longer a college senior who'd been through a pre-med or a science program, but they have students who are career changers coming from nursing, EMTs, physical therapists, even ski patrollers. And these new students already have a lot of experience and they're ready to demonstrate competence, and they shouldn't sit through a year of medical school courses just reabsorbing what they already know. So they've created a program that allows students to comp out by demonstrating competency through actual skills demonstrations and assessments that are hands-on, experiential. And what they found is that not only do the students get through the medical program faster, but they get a deeper knowledge, and then they're ready to go out into the field in areas that are shorthanded with medical staff. Now you think like, oh, that's kind of revolutionary. What's interesting is Johns Hopkins, NYU, and even Chicago are reassessing their programs to make them more demonstrated competency-based because of what's the success they've had in Oregon. There's a lot of charter schools out there that are very successful in this shift, this change, this evolution to a learner-centered, personalized, competency-based learning culture. In our grant program right now, City Academy and Spectrum Academy are in their implementation phase. American Academy of Innovation was one of our first LEAs to get on board with this. They're in the expansion phase. We also have Freedom Prep and Walden, who are in their implementation phase. And just this past year, we had 5 new LEAs join the planning grant phase, and 4 of them are charters: Quest, Odyssey, Promontory, and Summit. So I know a lot of you are here. I just want to say kudos to you. Great work. Keep it up. And I'm going to turn it over to Katie, who's talking about coaching, and I'll continue to monitor the chat. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Michael. It's nice to see everybody here. I'm going to share my screen. Maybe. Okay, hang on. Oops. Sorry, I should have practiced here for the interview. That's the ticket. Okay. All right. And all right, can everybody see the slide now? Are we good? Okay. Well, it's nice to see all of you. I feel like I've got some friends on the call here that I've met before. So thank you for being here, and thank you for hearing us talk about this. My name is Katie Dewey Hill, and Michael, as he said, I'm the quality instruction coordinator, and what I get to do in that role is work with professional learning standards and instructional coaching. So I get to oversee the instructional coaching endorsement, and some of you have schools that have been a part of that process. And so what I've found is that as you make any shift in any implementation, I noticed that some people shared that was one of the challenges, is the implementation part of any shift, especially what we're talking about now, is there has to be a coaching mechanism, whether that comes through leadership or a teacher who's a teacher leader of that, or an instructional coach. There has to be someone who can help teachers see how this matters to their job embedded functions. So I'm going to talk about one of the components of our PCBL framework, the culture of learning, and specifically, what is it? What does it take? And how do you know that that culture of learning is there? And so I first want to start off real quick here and find my window here. Oh, goodness. I tell you, sometimes when you got multiple things going on, Zoom is not my friend on that. Okay. Boop. Maybe. Here we go. Okay, so when we're considering a culture of learning, this is what is stated in the PCBL framework. Each learner is supported by communities committed to creating the culture, structure, policies, and instructional practices that engage them in their journey toward college, career, and life readiness. You notice there's not just college, not just career, and not just life, but all of those things, whatever they may be, going back to what Michael was sharing earlier. So that's a component here, but that PCBL cannot happen with just one person. It needs the community. And that's what we're kind of talking about here today. So the second part of this is that by leveraging a learner's unique assets and interests, holding high expectations, executing teacher clarity, and fostering meaningful relationships, an inclusive culture of learning allows each learner to define their pathway to success. So this isn't, you know, that all of our classrooms become the Borg, right? All one big collective, but that they're a group of individuals who are able to share all of those unique things, that we're not just accommodating students, but we're giving them a way to be part of the community and bring their differences as strengths to the group. So this tells us who is in the community. So in the community, we have administration. So that's part of the community, the leader of the school, the educators who work within the school directly with students, the support staff who support the educators who support the students, the families of those students who support the students, as well as the school community. The students are part of the community as well. They're a really important part. And sometimes we leave out the students when we're making decisions about the school community, and we shouldn't, because if they're going to have their capacity built to advocate for what they need and how they learn, then they need to be part of the discussion. And then we've got other community stakeholders as well. And I think about this, who else? And I want to tell you about, I went to see our Utah Teacher of the Year, who is an ag teacher in Delta, Utah. His name is Chad Warnick, and he's a pretty impressive fellow. He grew up in Delta and is very much part of that community. And he teaches animal science, and he teaches horticulture, and he works in their tech center, which also has welding and all the things, which I kind of can't believe that we're trusting ninth graders with hot blow torches, but you see how capable these children are with these real life tools. It's pretty amazing. And so when we think about what he has to do to be able to do what he's doing, is he partners closely with local industry. So the mining industry, talking about he's got a butcher who he works with to get the animal parts that he needs to help teach the kids about different aspects of the anatomy of the animals that they're working with. He's got a plant guy, and these are all industries where these students ultimately could go to, and that they have a relationship built with those businesses before they even leave school. And so I think about this, you could just say we're school in their business, but you'd be missing out on a very valuable partnership. And so getting creative, especially in our school communities, of what talents does the school community bring to us that could help benefit our kids. And so that's why we want to have a wide view of the school community, and including all of these people, so that everybody has a stake in the success of your school and creating that culture of learning. So altogether, we have to have what's called collective efficacy. And if you've been in education for any amount of time at all, you know that collective efficacy is a term that, you know, we use a lot. It's really important. And I'm going to share with you just real quick what I mean by it here. I'm using John Hattie's definition of collective efficacy. And basically, it means that we not only work together and are nice to each other and are friends, that's part of it, but the other part of this is that we believe that our collective efficacy, our collective work will lead to student success. So we're working together toward a common goal. And those schools that Michael shared earlier, that we have teachers who are having flexible means, you know, we have a tight objective, a tight learning intention that we want everybody to reach, but then we also have flexible means by which they can get there, which means that we got to work together. Teachers don't all know everything. Right? And so as we work all together and have a staff where everybody gets along, and I know you're all thinking, wouldn't that be a dream? You know, if all of my staff were getting along and nice to each other, that would be great. And the kids can feel it. And as we've visited multiple sites where they are working on implementing personalized competency-based learning, the common thing, because they're all really different, they're all really different schools. They don't all look the same. Sometimes we get that question, all right, well, how do I do it? What are the steps? You realize, well, first of all, your steps are going to be very personalized. That P is really important. But realizing that the thing they all have in common is that they all work together and believe that working together is going to make a big difference in the success of students. And so they are able to benefit from this very powerful collective efficacy practice, even though it all looks different wherever the sites are. So we think about some conditions that support this culture. first, and this is from the Essential Guide to the Essential Guide for Student-Centered Coaching, whatever K-12 coach and school leader needs to know. And this book talks about what are the good conditions for coaching success, and they really get into the fact that it needs to be student-centered. It's not about fixing teachers. It's not about fixing classroom dysfunction and making it better, but it's about making the coaching about the kids. It's not my data as the teacher, it's student data, and the student data is the information I need to be able to build a strategy that will reach my students. And so if you're wondering, I don't want to prepare 9 lessons for one lesson to make it personalized for all the students, that's really hard to do, especially if you don't have the information you need in the form of data. So helping our teachers to really be comfortable with data and not afraid of it is going to be really important. And that's going to involve what I've just shared here with this bullet, that we're embracing the mess of learning. We don't always know what we're doing, do we? And that's okay. A good culture of learning shows teachers that are vulnerable in front of each other. They're embracing the mess, that this is hard, but this is a process, and that's okay. I don't need to be perfect. Sometimes educators have this need to be perfect. We attach our character to how well it's going in our classrooms. And so if it's going really well, we're good people. And if it's not going very well, I've got a character issue. There's something wrong with my soul. And we need to help teachers understand that's not the case. And that's where, if we can embrace the mess of learning and trying things and being vulnerable, we're going to really be able to support that culture of learning, which will ultimately help us get there, because the kids also need to be able to embrace the mess. And I just think about those students that I've had that seem to be perfectionists, right? That took feedback really hard and were really upset when things didn't go perfectly. And that's a student we need to help them lower the stakes and realizing that we're here to learn. And so embracing that in front of them helps them have permission to have some space to figure things out. Adults are taking the stance of the learner by making our learning visible. Students, here's what I've been working on this week. When I invite my coach in to come help me with this lesson, it's because I want it to be better for you. And so helping those teachers to show that stance of a learner is really important. They're using that student evidence to drive their decision-making, and they're calling it out. Listen, everybody, as I was looking at how we did yesterday, I learned some things. First of all, I learned that we needed more help on XYZ. I thought about this, and I think there's a better way I can teach this, and sharing that with the students. Reflecting and adjusting teaching practices. How am I going to do things differently now that I know? Modeling that in their professional learning communities that they're engaging with their fellow teachers. Of guess what? This lesson crashed and burned. It wasn't good. Doesn't mean I don't know what I'm talking about. It just means for this group of kids, that one didn't work out. What did you do, Shannon? And I'm asking you, and we're talking through how, something was successful, and Shannon may say, I haven't got it figured out either. I don't know. Let's see if we can figure this out together. And so as we're going through and the teachers are talking to each other, they're going to see, oh, this is an area we don't really have enough curriculum to work with. We need to see what we can do to find some more or find some resources to help us teach the standard better. And so if we're seeing those students where it's just like, we are not getting through, I don't know what, instead of just giving up and saying the kids aren't hardworking enough or smart enough, that we work together to figure out what can we do to reach them, to help that kid see the relevancy of what we're teaching. And that we're also just all using shared decision making. This can be really tricky for teachers because honestly, a lot of us have control issues. It's one of the things that attracts us to the field, probably. I taught elementary school for a while, and I understand, it's really fun to get them to do things like, okay, everybody do this. And it's just really fun. So I say that because it means that we have to cede some control to our students, to perhaps our students' families, to help understanding that teachers' voices, experience, and perspectives are taken into account as far as policy from the school level. Principals need to share some of that decision making, and then that's a good model for the teachers so that they can also include the students in some of those decisions that they're making. Because sometimes we just hear top down, and then teachers teach top down. And if we can have all of those voices, have us all having ears to hear all those voices, we can really make a big difference in the way that we do business and creating that culture of learning where everybody owns it. Sometimes I've noticed whenever I'm running a professional learning session that it can be difficult to get participation sometimes, because we say, oh, well, if I'm You know, we all hate sit and get, we do, but it doesn't ask anything of us. And sometimes our students are going to respond that way too. I'm trying to do this engaging thing, but it's pulling teeth. If they're not used to being asked, it's going to take a minute to help them understand the new world where we're all working together and there's expectation on the learner's part to play, to engage. And so that's where I really just want to have the patience for the process, because everybody's learning something new, a new way of doing business, really, where there's as much expected of the students as there are the teachers. And Michael has this saying that's gotten pretty famous around USBE, that we need to stop sending home kids bored and teachers exhausted, and that we need to start sending teachers home. Michael, what's the alternative?
Yeah,
Students
it's not the
tired.
reverse. We don't want to send teachers home bored, but we want to
No.
send teachers home feeling fulfilled, and the students should be tired.
They should be tired. Yes. So we don't send students home bored and teachers exhausted. We send home teachers fulfilled and students tired because they've been working all day, building those structures in their brains, the point of being at school. So having all those pieces and components, a coach is the one who's really helping with that. And a coach may come in the form of a teacher leader. It may come in the form of a principal, but realizing that this is the kind of culture we want to nurture, where everybody feels safe to not be perfect and everybody has room for growth, and that growth is good and resistance to growth is not good, right? And so if we're afraid of it, then we need to help that person feel safe enough to grow where they are. So thinking about this, the whole goal, we need a uniting goal. And luckily in Utah, we have this lands trust money that requires that we select a school improvement goal. And this is where sometimes teachers don't even know what the school improvement goal is. I've worked in schools before where we didn't know what the school improvement goal was. That was the box you check and the SC, the school community council rubber stamps it and we're good. But we want to make sure that that's a meaningful goal. And it needs to be narrow. It can't be all over the place. But this is a great way to focus the effort on that single goal and strategy so that everybody has something to work toward, to where it's not just my problem to make that happen, but that it's all of our problem to make it happen. That collective efficacy, in order for it to work, we all need to be working together on something. So if we've got 500 goals, and I've read some grant proposals, I used to help with the DTL grant before. As I was reading through those, there'd be people who had like 10,000 goals, and they were all good goals, but it was too many. And so if you have too many goals, then you're not going to probably accomplish any of them. And so this is where I just really wanted to just hear what you're thinking. This question here, how do you know? All those good things I just talked about, how do you know what's happening? So we're going to do another little tech tool here. And I want to share with you this. You can either do the QR code if you want to, or you can do this bit.ly, bit.ly/COLPCBL, culture of learning. And this is a Mentimeter. So what this is going to create for us is a word cloud. So if we go to that, Michael, can you put that in the chat maybe, just so it's easy? And the question is, what do you see that helps you know that there's a culture of learning? So I'm going to put this up here. And as you guys submit your 1, 2, or 3 words of how you know there's a culture of learning. So I'd love for you to share that. And then we'll see our word cloud form collectively all together. You walk into a place, what do you see that makes you know that this is a place where everybody's valuing learning together? That there's a culture of learning. Yep, so please just go to that little website that Michael has put here. There we go. Thank you. We have engaged students. There's some noise. I love it. There's curiosity, right? And it's okay if you're like, I actually haven't seen this a lot. That's all right. This is your dream school, right? One where all these things are happening. And engagement's big because a lot of you are putting that, right? Communication. Change is happening and we're not afraid of it. Awesome. Enthusiasm. Excitement. And I remember when I was you know, I don't know, the early days of my teaching career, and there was this school, who's that guy? Ron Clark school, where it looked like a Nickelodeon episode. There's like, it's just mayhem all day, so much excitement, so much energy, and I was like, that looks crazy. I would hate it there. It's too much. So I appreciate that like engagement doesn't have to mean craziness, but it means that like you can tell what's going on and realizing that, you know, you may have a school, there's a buzz of productivity happening around the room, but it doesn't need to mean mayhem. That you can, I visited another Teacher of the Year finalist in Roosevelt a little while ago, and it was an art class, and the kids were doing fiber art is what it was called, but it was wool, and they were, I don't know the term, I'm sorry, but yeah, they're poking the thing into the wool to kind of tease it out because they're making these little cool thing. Anyway, the kids, like, there's like 9 adults from the district and the state superintendent, everybody walks in the room, and the kids like look up and they're like, and they just kept working on their little fiber art that they were doing. And we could have all just dropped dead in front of them and they wouldn't have stopped working. They were just so focused on what they were doing. And just realizing that like sometimes that engagement is quiet. That's okay. It means they're focused. And I didn't see anybody looking at a phone. They were all focused on working on their art project. And so just realizing that, yes, it's engagement, but that may look different. It may be louder or quieter depending on what's happening. But the important thing is that the students are learning and that they're interested and curious. So I love these other adjectives. So thank you for sharing those pieces. All right, we're gonna go to our next piece here, and I'm almost done here. And I want to just kind of, this came to my mind as I was thinking about what to prepare for today. That building culture isn't fast. Some of you have been in your school for a long time. Some of you may be inheriting a school that has great things, and I'm going to call it all baggage. There's good baggage, there's difficult baggage, but you're not getting these blank slates. That's what adults are. They're not blank slates. And so that's something to consider as you're thinking, okay, I want a culture of learning. I want people who are happy to be here and people that are open to learning all of the things that we were talking about earlier and building that culture of learning like y'all were describing here. So there's a couple things I want to share. First, there's climate. And this comes from the School Culture Rewired book that I have, and I would recommend it. It was really an interesting book, and I think you guys would like it here. But it talks about the difference between culture and climate. Climate is the group's attitude, the way we feel around here. So guess what? All teachers next year are getting a 5% raise. Yay! That's a happy group of people, you know, depending on how they feel about 5%. But realizing that like that's probably not going to sustain for days and days and days. It's going to be happy when you hear it, you know, or sorry, teachers, but we're losing 2 FTE next year. Bummer, sad, right? Like that's how we feel right now. And it's based a lot on what's going on. So the way we feel around here, that's the climate, the temporary piece. Now the culture is different. This is really the group's personality, the way we do things around here. This is more sustained. And so realizing that we can't rush culture, right? We got to build it. We can't force it. We might at best get compliance, but that we need to be able to be slow and let people transition into this culture of learning. And you're going to have to reinforce that like mistakes are okay. I know that's a new thing for you, you might say to that teacher, but realizing that like you can do this through the climate, right? So the more you're establishing those things and seeing and recognizing the successes that happen, that can really help impact the culture. And so the last thing I want to say here is that we really need to, this is what it looks like to me as far as the culture of learning. We're making our learning visible. We ask questions, we name challenges, we settle into the role of the adult learner. Now, we don't just name challenges and live there. We name challenges and we figure out how to deal with them. Because sometimes we stay in the commiserating phase for too long. We don't want that to happen. We need to we look at them as opportunities. Those who have coached for some time have likely experienced the authenticity and richness of conversations when both participants are truly grappling. This is both the leader or the coach or whomever that may be, and the educator, and maybe the students too. Both participants are truly grappling, wondering, and making meaning together. So realizing I'm the boss, we're going to do it my way, is probably not going to get you there. But realizing that as a leader, you're going to need to be vulnerable and help say, I don't know how to do this for sure. Let's work on it together. And helping those teachers to understand this piece is that we're all here working for the students. That's the point. Becoming better teachers is a great goal to have. And the reason we want to be better teachers is because that's what the students deserve. So I'm going to switch over to my friend Quinn Kellis, who's going to talk about leadership and their impact with this. And Quinn, you're muted, so I don't know if you know that.
Good afternoon. You guys are doing awesome. Thank you so much for sticking with us for this afternoon. You're going up on almost 90 minutes just with us. I have 10 minutes with you, and it's going to go like a flash in the pan. So I'm going to share here and make sure that what you're seeing is what I'm seeing. So you saw this slide a little bit earlier when Michael was giving his presentation. That is, what does PCBL look like in Utah schools? And then you saw another slide that said about higher education, and he talked a little bit about even those folks in the universities are developing a vision of what PCBL looks like in the universities. So the big question right now is, what does PCBL look like at your school? Now, this is the visioning part of it. And I'm going to be talking about leadership in the next couple minutes here. So as a leader, what is your vision of PCBL for your school? Not what is your understanding of it, not what is the textbook definition of PCBL, but what is your vision for PCBL in your school? So imagine, here's one of those raising the level of concern for you. Imagine next fall, you are going to start the school year with PCBL. So what would that look like for your staff and your students? Well, from a leadership perspective, leaders have to understand for themselves what PCBL is and have an open mind about what it's going to look like at your school. The very foundation of leadership is vision, and you can't lead if you don't know where you are going. So next fall, when you open the school year with PCBL, where will you be leading your staff? As we look at this responsibility of leadership, too often we do the visioning, but we never start. And we just, several of us went to Seattle a few weeks ago for some school visits about inclusionary practices. Every single school leader said the key to their success was they started it. They didn't talk about it to death. They actually took the leap and started it. So just to give you some more help with the visioning, here are two pictures, picture A and picture B. And for the next little bit, I'm going to be asking you to do a lot of commenting in the chat box. Just first thing that comes to mind, comment in the chat box about what PCBL elements you see in these pictures and label it. In picture A, I see this, and picture B, I see that. So if you could just very briefly share what elements of PCBL do you see in these two pictures? This might be a picture right out of one of your schools. And maybe there are elements of PCBL already existing. What do you see in these two pictures as far as elements of PCBL? Okay, I'm going to be going very quickly through these because I have another set of pictures. And we're going to these pictures. Two different sets, picture C and picture D. So in C, what elements of PCBL do you see in that picture? Same with picture D. My guess is that if you were to walk into any one of your classrooms in your schools, you would see something very similar to these pictures. It's already happening to some degree. And I'll bet your teachers are not calling it PCBL. But if you could identify those elements of PCBL, as we've been talking about for the last 90 minutes, what elements would you identify in pictures C and D? All right, we're gonna keep on moving to the next screen here. And this is a short video. It's about 3.5 minutes is all. Don't worry about the cost of this school. They probably put triple the money into building the school with the furniture and the rooms and whatnot. But think about elements of PCBL in this little short video. And I'm hoping you'll be able to hear.
One thing for me that is exciting to show people examples of new forms of architecture, that it isn't one big open space or a small space. It's that around the world, architects are responding to teachers saying, wouldn't it be great if we had a seminar room? Wouldn't it be great if we had a policy room? Wouldn't it be terrific if we had alcoves where you could have flowing spaces and smaller spaces, or elevated space? And then the other is furniture, which is responsive to actually what helps students concentrate and do work, as opposed to old hard desks. That the idea is that form should follow function, and in American education, form leads function. And one of the most fundamental forms, perhaps the most fundamental, is physical space. You've taken your existing spaces and you're repurposing them.
And another thing that appeared seamlessly for me was the collaboration. At the lower grades, you could see kids already in little chairs just rocking and, you know, working together. Some might want to read, buddy read. Another group might have been group reading. Another one was reading alone, you know, those types of things. And there was an appreciation for whatever type of way they wanted to learn, they could learn that way. It's okay. It's safe to do that here. You don't have to learn this way, that way. It's not right. It's not wrong. It's okay. However it is that you want to receive this information, you know, and internalize it and then show mastery, that appeared to be okay. Like for me, I have seen the word personalized learning 1,000 times. I have. And I hear people talk about it, and there are 1,000 books on it, and you know, everyone wants to be in with the new catchphrase. But this was the first time that I really had an opportunity to see personalized learning. But it wasn't because of what the teachers were doing. For me, it was what the students were doing and able to articulate. I appreciate that. And then the fact that you all still had choices. Not only choices for students, but choices for teachers. You know, traditional classroom if you want one. Looping, you know, multi-age classrooms. I mean, there were still options within all of everything that you all had going on.
Because they just got this concept of personalized learning last spring. And to me, the fact that the teachers are so motivated to try even some of these things in the traditional setting and the traditional schedule in which we're working is a positive step forward.
And instructionally with curriculum, how are you dealing with that question? So the bigger one is the climate of the entire school, the schools. And then the next one is, like, for example, purposeful learning. Well, it seems to me that in any classroom we walk in, we would want to see purposeful learning. So then the challenge, I think, is what would distinguish one classroom from another as they interpret what it means to have purposeful learning. Because you want everything to feel as if the school is for you. As we're beginning to see the kids coming from this school to there, they will be so ready for that, because they will have had plenty of opportunities to have maker spaces and all the other kinds of imaginative things. And by the time they get to high school, you know, they're going to be very ready to be out in the world one way or another.
Okay, so elements of PCBL in that example. I had thought it'd be great to show this video again, but from the lens of a leader and as the principal, what leadership traits were required for this school to be a showcase school for a national focus group to go and visit. Again, leadership. One of the things that I heard them say that I was very impressed with is nothing changed with the focus on purposeful learning. That is a given and that's non-negotiable. You have to have that as the standard, but as you go through and you provide the different options, you start looking at the leadership traits. Going to the next slide here is the change process. And leaders understand the process of change. When you talk about cultural change, it is not natural. Cultural change is intentional and it is strategic. Now, this isn't going to be a lesson about how to change because there's endless methods for implementing change. Pick the change process that works for you and your teachers, your staff, and start the process. Get it going. It always starts with vision, and then you go around through the different stages of it and come back up again to the top. But when you're talking about it, you have to understand change doesn't just happen. You can't just say, okay, we're going to do this next fall, and then next fall comes and you're curious, why didn't anything change? It's not just understanding it. You have to have an intentional and strategic plan to make it happen. So we're not going to watch that video again. We're going to talk about the supports that you need. I will just extend 3 extraordinary supports to you right now. And that is these 3 individuals who know a good amount about the PCBL process. But you're going to need more than this, but please contact us. Feel free to reach out to the USBE staff. And there's a lot of resources that are available as Michael particularly has led the charge and has a website that is just full of resources. So I hope that you will please access those. And with that, I just want to thank you for your leadership. Thank you for putting students and teachers in your life and your commitment to their prosperity and success. You're on a good pathway and there's nothing but brightness and future ahead of you. So thank you, Marie, for letting us come and present and having some time with these extraordinary leaders you have.
Thank you. This was great and really helpful. And I don't know if I shared with you guys, but this was our #1 requested topic from our survey last year. So really exciting. So thank you so much for being here and for all of that great information. And I'm sure we'll follow up and maybe have more when we send out our next survey. So thank you again. All right, well, that wraps up our meeting. So have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the nice weather. Hopefully it stays safe and warm where you are. And we will see you in May for our last directors meeting of this school year. So have a great afternoon, everyone.